In the messy, controversial world of wellness influencers, few names rose as quickly and fell as spectacularly as Belle Gibson. Around the years 2011 to 2014, Belle Gibson climbed her way to wealth and social media stardom when she claimed that she had cured her terminal brain cancer through diet and alternative therapies. Her cookbook and associated app, The Whole Pantry, became a worldwide sensation. And those real-life people who are vulnerable and facing real health crises like cancer put their trust in her, seeing her as a beacon for hope. But there was just one problem. Belle Gibson never had cancer. Hi guys, welcome back to Hardly Human. My name is Sarah Birch, and thank you so much for being here. If you are a new viewer, then please stay. Check out my channel, check out some of my previous videos, and if you like what you see, then I would love it for you to subscribe and hit the notifications. And if you are back and you are a recurring viewer, then thank you so much for being here today. I've had Belle Gibson on my content list for a long time. I have always found her very psychologically interesting. I find pathological liars to be some of the most fascinating psychologically people on the earth. Obviously, I don't think that they're good people. I don't want to be friends with them. But it does interest me to know why these people do what they do, what motivates them, what compels them, what happened in their childhood that potentially motivated them to create these false lies and fantasies for attention, or were they just born that way? Is this something like, bipolar disorder, for example, that you're just born with and you can't really fully control? Anyway, I don't have all the answers to those questions, but Belle Gibson is a very interesting case study for pathological lying. She reminds me quite a lot of Sherry Papini, who I have also done a full story time, a full video on this channel. I will link that below. So make sure you check out that video after this one if you want to be truly infuriated with how despicable some people can be and the lengths that some people will go to for attention, money, and just to pretend that their life is more interesting than it really is. As I've said, I've had Belle on my content list for a while and I've always wanted to talk about her, but I felt like I should probably just do it now because Netflix recently came out with a show this week called Apple Cider Vinegar starring Kaitlyn Dever, who plays Belle Gibson. And I watched the entire show. I wanted to watch it before I did this video just to include a little bit of my thoughts on the show within the video because I do think that this show, especially considering it's Netflix, I think this show is going to introduce this case to millions of new people. And so in this video, I want to discuss the show a little bit and what I liked and disliked about it, but I also want to break down the real factual timeline and story of Belle Gibson, kind of dispel a few of the things in the show, discuss a few things in more detail. So if you're interested in that, then stick around and we're going to get into it now. So as I said, Kaitlyn Dever, she's a great actress with a phenomenal Australian accent. Mad kudos to her for that accent. It was very impressive because I know Australian accents are very tough to do. There was also a character named Milla Blake, and she is loosely based, well, honestly, pretty closely based to an Australian woman named Jessica Ainscow, who actually was diagnosed with, sorry guys, I'm going to have to look down, epithelioid sarcoma, which is an aggressive type of cancer at the age of 22. So that's very similar to Milla's story in the show. They suggested that they remove her arm from the shoulder down. She really didn't want to do that, which I can understand. I can basically understand every person's perspective in the show and in the story except for Belle Gibson. But anyway, that's besides the point. But Milla decided to instead pursue alternative, more so natural remedies like Gerson therapy, which we're going to get into later. And she became known as the wellness warrior. She documented her exploration with these alternative natural medicines on social media. She ended up publishing a book, and she became quite a celebrity, so to speak, on social media for this journey that she was going on and what an inspiration she was to people. However, her cancer came back more aggressive than ever, and she died tragically in 2015 at the age of 29. And the way they kind of paint it out in this show is that Belle sort of copied Milla, but I'm not really sure that that's the case in real life because Belle had been making outlandish claims about her health since she was like 13. And I think that would have been before Milla Blake ever popped off on social media. Or sorry, that would have been before Jessica Ainscow ever popped off on social media. So this was something Belle was doing since she was a child. Anyway, my quick little thoughts on the show before we get into the case is that I have noticed, everybody's noticed, a prevalence of these type of shows coming out lately, like The Drop. Sorry, I don't know if you guys could hear that. Darla just did the biggest sigh of all time. That was pretty cute. Anyway, shows like The Dropout, shows like Inventing Anna, and now this type of show that are basically giving a retelling, but kind of also giving a platform to these social scammers, these horrible people who conned other people out of money, even the Tinder swindler. I know that was a documentary, and I have a different thought on documentaries versus these type of dramatized retellings, like a scripted show. I think documentaries are always fine because you're basically just presenting the facts, and it can serve as a sort of cautionary tale. And often they really do paint this person out to be the piece of shit that they are, versus these type of scripted shows like The Dropout or Apple Cider Vinegar can definitely stray into that territory of glamorizing people, romanticizing people, giving people a sympathetic edit sometimes, and just honestly like falsifying the truth. And I mean, they always say, right, like this is based on true events. This is not a fully true story, right? They cover their butts, so to speak, with that type of language, protective language. And every single episode of Apple Cider Vinegar at the very beginning, one of the characters would say directly into the camera, like breaking the fourth wall. They would say that Belle Gibson did not get any financial benefit from this show. So I'm glad that they address that, and they continuously address that, because obviously that would be a big concern for people. But even still, Belle Gibson is getting what she always wanted. She's getting a plethora of attention on her. It's just a gray area. It's an ethical, moral gray area. Anyway, just let me know what you guys think. I don't really have a strong opinion on this. It's just a conversation that I think we're going to continue to have because these type of shows keep coming out. And not only are they coming out, but they're performing very well, and people seem really interested in them because people are interested in the darker, more twisted side of human psychology, including me. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll get a dialogue going. All right, now that all that is out of the way, it is time to get into the actual case of Belle Gibson. Oh, right, here we go. So Belle Gibson was born on October 8th, 1991 in Tasmania, Australia. She has one older brother named Nick, and her mother unfortunately suffered from multiple sclerosis throughout her life. Not much is really known in a concrete sense about Belle's childhood. She has sort of hinted that she had a very rough childhood, kind of a traumatic childhood, that she was neglected by her mom, that she was never given toys, she was never properly cared for. In the show, they explore that a little bit. They kind of paint her mother out to be a bit of an absentee mother, like just mentally kind of in her own world. But also, every single thing Belle says and every claim Belle makes about her childhood or otherwise needs to be taken with not just a grain of salt, but a massive swimming pool full of salt, okay? So I'm just going to say that now. One common thread that I did find throughout her childhood in terms of accounts from people who knew her, like her brother and her childhood friends, is that Belle had been lying since she was a young girl. Belle was very known to be overdramatic, melodramatic, constantly making up stories, constantly saying the most outlandish things. And the people in her life, including her mom, including her brother, had kind of just ignored her and kind of just knew, all right, don't listen to Belle or don't take her seriously. They just let her lie, really. And I think that's normal in little bits and pieces here or there. Like, you know, it's not a massive red flag if a child is lying a little bit, but it is definitely a red flag if it's a consistent thing year after year after year. At that point, it just basically becomes a pathology, and it becomes a deeply ingrained part of their psychology, and it shapes the way that they go on to live in adulthood. So for certain people like Belle Gibson, I feel like it gets to a point with them where they really can't remember any of their lies. They can't keep track of everything they've said, and it just becomes a compulsion. Belle ran away from home at age 12, which is quite telling. And apparently she just moved in with some random man for a while. I don't really know much more about that. That gives me very sketchy vibes, but you know, I don't want to assume anything. And then eventually she dropped out of school in year 10 and decided to move to Perth, which is literally across the country from where she was living before. And she spent a little bit of time in Perth, and then she eventually moved to Melbourne. And that is where she fell pregnant at age 18. She was working a sort of secretarial position, administrative position for a health insurance company at that time when she was pregnant, which I know is ironic that she once worked filing health claims for a health insurance company, considering what she went on to do. But yeah, she was pregnant at a very young age, basically living on her own, high school dropout, trying to navigate life, living in a crappy apartment. And in certain ways, Belle is kind of an inspirational figure. I mean, obviously she's a horrible person for what she did, but the fact that she was able to pull herself up from her bootstraps from this very precarious situation that she found herself in at 18 to becoming so successful, it just shows that Belle was truly one of those people who was delusional in her confidence, delusional in her sense of self-grandeur, and really had these high hopes for herself, and she would not rest until she reached them. And it kind of shows you like how far you can go with that mindset, even if you have no qualifications, even if you're outright like lying through your teeth, you can still get so far and like manipulate so many people if you have that true sense of like confidence, delusion, self-grandeur, and just really refusing to quit. I mean, if Belle really was who she says she was, then this would have been an amazing inspirational story. I'm going to move you guys in a little closer here so I can lean back because my hips are hurting. I'm an old lady and my hips are hurting. Okay, there we go. So there's photos I'm going to put here of Belle when she was like in her teenage years, I believe. And she definitely has like kind of like a grungy e-girl vibe going, like an alternative vibe. She's got this jet black dark hair with the bangs and the glasses and the graphic tees. And it was said that Belle used to hang out a lot at the skate park and kind of had an interest in skateboarding culture. So she actually joined an online forum in 2005 for skateboarding. And it is said that that is where she made her very first outlandish health claim. She went on to post, "I just woke up out of a coma type thing and had no idea what was going on. The doctor comes in and tells me that the draining failed and I went into cardiac arrest and died for just under 3 minutes." So yeah, that was the first ever false health claim that Belle ever made. And then it just goes on to spiral out of control from there. So Belle started documenting a little bit more of her health journey on there because naturally she got some responses from people like, "Oh my God, are you okay? What happened?" So she was fueled by this care and attention and urgency from people. So she kept the lie going. And she said that she was experiencing all these crazy symptoms like headaches and dizziness. So she went into one doctor. This is all according to Belle. So you really don't know. But she went into one doctor and explained her symptoms. And they basically were like, "We don't know. We've done tests. You seem fine." So she decided to go to another doctor, Dr. Mark Jones, which is literally the most made up name I've ever heard. And he apparently allegedly worked at the Peter MacCallum Cancer Center in Victoria, which, spoiler alert, there is no man by that name who works there, let alone a doctor. And he apparently diagnosed Belle with terminal brain cancer. Keep in mind, Belle is pregnant throughout this whole thing that she's making up in her head, but still, when she's talking to people online about all of this, she's pregnant. So she was given 4 months to live max with this terminal brain cancer diagnosis. And she told people, she explained online that while she briefly pursued traditional medicine like chemotherapy, she decided for the safety of her and her baby that she was going to heal herself through a healthy diet, a healthy lifestyle, and alternative medicines. She began documenting all of this on like a blog online, but then eventually turned over to Instagram in 2010 when Instagram really popped off or really started. It didn't pop off at that time, but like when Instagram really started, she created a username called healing_Belle and started documenting her journey on there, posting photos, posting videos of herself, talking, inspirational quotes, recipes, etc., etc. I mean, not that dissimilar from the type of health accounts that we see now, health and wellness accounts. But this was in the very, very beginning of Instagram and the very beginning of social media when everything was just so much better, to be honest. I really miss this version of Instagram with the crazy filters and the photos of your toes in the sand and the cheesy quotes. I really miss that version of Instagram. But it was also a time of naivety and innocence with people where they didn't just automatically assume the worst of social media users and influencers. People kind of took everything you said and everything you did at face value. Now there's obviously this massive sense of skepticism and cynicism with social media influencers. Rightly so, because we've seen time and time again with people like Belle Gibson or Amanda Riley that people will lie and will post all this fake stuff on social media for money, for attention, for clout. But anyway, Belle's following grew really quickly on Instagram. People were inspired by her story. People wanted to follow along and see her progress. And Belle at first started a company called Organic Baby, but she eventually realized that that had a cap to it and that had a limit of how much she could do with it. So she turned her sights instead to creating an app called The Whole Pantry. She was 21 years old when she launched the Whole Pantry app in 2013, and this took off like wildfire. The app essentially would just offer healthy recipes and tips for a healthy lifestyle, and it became basically the app that everyone was immediately downloading on their phone. Within its first month alone, this app got 200,000 downloads, which is pretty impressive for a random girl who created this app from nothing. And it was also selected as Apple's best food and drink app of 2013. Soon, Belle set her sights even higher and wanted to create a cookbook called The Whole Pantry that was sort of fall in alignment with the app. She eventually struck a deal with Penguin Publishing House, which is a massive, very popular, highly esteemed publishing house, and they decided to go ahead with her and create a book called The Whole Pantry by Belle Gibson that would basically just be recipes, but would also showcase her story a little bit and use that as a marketing tool, right? Like that's going to draw people more to the bookshelves than anything else to hear about this young single mother, she was in a relationship, a young mother who pulled herself up from her bootstraps, and simply by her determination and bravery alone, she's able to overcome cancer and become this entrepreneur. That is the type of story that people wanted to believe and people would believe because people didn't have that same sense of skepticism and cynicism that they have now. Side note about The Whole Pantry, which they didn't talk about really in the show, but a lot of the recipes here were plagiarized, pretty much all of them. Belle says in the show, there's like a little moment where Belle's like, oh, I made them up myself. And you can tell she's lying. But this was a bigger deal in real life than they made it out in the show. But yeah, this Penguin looked like absolute idiots, right? Like they took a chance on this random girl without fact-checking any of her history, fact-checking any of her background. And they didn't even fact-check the recipes in the book. And one of the recipes was actually from Martha Stewart, of all people. So this was kind of a big deal and made Penguin look really bad. Eventually, Belle said that she was in remission and she had healed herself from brain cancer, right? And that was why people were following her every move and her every piece of advice. People were desperate for help, right? People whose mother had cancer, people who had cancer themselves, people whose friends had cancer. Everybody was flocking to this app and flocking to this book and flocking to her social media to get advice from this health guru who somehow healed herself of terminal brain cancer. But one day, randomly, Belle decided that, she needed another dose of attention and sympathy from people. So she put out this dramatic statement claiming that she had a third and fourth cancer now, and the cancer had I can't say that word. The cancer had metastasized and spread throughout her body. And she claimed that she not only had malignant brain cancer, but she had blood cancer, spleen cancer, uterine cancer, liver, and kidney cancer. Yet, she was determined to heal herself through fruit juices and salads. She also was pretty staunchly anti-vax and claimed that the Gardasil vaccine, which young women often get, including myself, to protect them from cervical cancer, she claims the Gardasil vaccine was what gave her cancer in the first place. She was basically telling young mothers on social media to not vaccinate their kids. She was also promoting unpasteurized raw milk, which is also very dangerous. But anyway, Belle basically was that type of girly, She's the type of girly you actually probably see a lot on social media now, who is anti-vax, promoting raw milk, vegan, just really in your face. Except she probably wasn't actually vegan. I don't think she actually was a vegan in real life, but she was claiming she was vegan. In real life, she was drinking alcohol, she was doing drugs, she was smoking, she was eating Cheetos. This is what she was doing in real life, but you were never going to see any of that if you followed Belle on social media. Belle also promoted Gerson therapy, which was the type of therapy that Jessica Ainscow, or Milla Blake's character, also was claiming was healing her. And this is essentially an enema that you do multiple times a day and you drink a lot of fruit juices. It's a very controversial type of healing treatment. There's no scientific proof that this actually works. Belle's most successful years, by all accounts, in terms of fiscally successful on social media, successful in terms of relevance, were 2013 and 2014. Her book was selling out everywhere with rave reviews. Her app was doing really well on the Apple Store. And because her app was doing so well and people were so inspired by her story, Apple, the massive tech conglomerate, actually decided that they wanted to fly Belle out to California for meetings and to collaborate on putting the whole pantry app on the Apple Watch, which was set to be released very soon. So the Apple Watch was going to have the whole pantry app built into the Apple Watch itself. That was going to be the whole pantry, which is a huge deal and would probably have been in substantial payday for Belle Gibson. Luckily, the timing of all this lined up so that never actually happened. But yeah, that was going to be the next step for Belle. And she was flying to and from Australia to California to meet with Apple. And she was kind of Apple's golden girl. She was also recognized by Cosmopolitan magazine at their award ceremony and was given the Fun, Fearless Female Social Media Award. So yeah, she's up there accepting her award, smiling, taking photos, all while knowing deep down that she is lying to everybody. So yeah, she makes Apple look like a fool. She's making Cosmopolitan look like a fool. She's making Penguin publishers look like a fool. It's just wild. Belle was seemingly on top of the world, right? She's flying to all these events, giving speeches, giving interviews, making more money than she probably knows what to do with. She was in a relationship at the time with a man named Clive, and he was helping out a lot with her son. And yeah, she just seemed to be living her best life. To think that from 2010 to 2013, she had made this much progress and this much headway is pretty incredible. She had a rapid incline into success, but she also had just as rapid, if not more of a rapid decline into trashing her entire reputation and losing everything. Sometimes the faster you rise, the faster you fall. And that is why I'm so glad it's taking me forever to get subscribers on YouTube. It's just like, the slower it takes for me to get success on here, hopefully the longer that success will last. That's what I tell myself anyway. Anyway, from the outside looking in, Belle was seemingly thriving and living her absolute best life. But behind the scenes, cracks were definitely forming in the foundation of her relationships with other people, including her romantic relationship with Clive, her friendships, and her relationship with her business associates, like her manager and the people who work with her day in and day out on the app, on the book. People were definitely starting to grow more skeptical of Belle Gibson. I mean, for one, she's claiming that she's currently trying to fight off 5 or 6 different cancers, but she's got glowing, long, silky hair, beautiful skin, big smile, lots of energy, posting all over social media. It's just that is not how a person with cancer looks, talks, behaves. And for her to claim that she does have cancer, yet she can go for a nice big walk and she can get dressed up every day and put makeup on every day, that is setting a very unrealistic, damaging standard for all those people who are watching online who do have cancer. They're losing weight drastically. They're losing their hair. They're losing their freaking will to live. And this girl's out here promoting this completely false reality. And that disgusts me beyond belief. Anyway, people were starting to smell bullshit. So in 2014, a few of her friends staged an intervention for Belle, where they basically straight up said, "Do you have cancer? Are you lying?" And Belle apparently gave all of these kind of rambling non-answers. She was answering things kind of, but not really saying anything, like a big word salad. And they were asking, do you have evidence? Do you have hard proof? Like, do you have doctor's notes? Do you have any scans? Do you have any treatment plans? Like anything you can show us to show that you have cancer. And Belle basically would just say, I don't keep any of that stuff around. I get rid of it because it's negative energy and I don't want that negative energy near me. Convenient, I guess. Also, some of her friends who would like attend parties with her or just like hang with her, they were noticing that Belle was drinking, doing drugs, smoking, like eating junk food, not really abiding by any of these standards that she set out for herself and kind of put on and projected onto all these other people watching her. So she was a massive hypocrite on top of everything else. So this intervention, I would say, was really the beginning of the end for Belle Gibson, and karma would finally catch up to her in 2015. And 2015 was the year that everything would burn down for Belle Gibson. And that's what I'm saying. It was a quick rise and a quick fall. Like basically 5 years from Belle being completely irrelevant, living in a small little apartment like with her baby, to being on top of the world, literally the media's darling, Apple's darling, and all of that being stripped away. Australian journalists started to get tips and catch wind of some of these rumors flying around that Belle Gibson was lying about her cancer and that she was also defrauding multiple charities by claiming she was going to make charitable contributions to all these different charities. She'd say all this stuff on her social media, like this month I'm donating this to this place. This month all of my revenue from this thing is going to go into this, and making all these claims online publicly, but not following through with any of them. These were the two different kind of paths that journalists were going to go down. They were going to, in the short span, they were going to confront her fraud allegations and her money laundering, essentially. And in the long term, they were going to try to go after the cancer allegations. Eventually, the truth came out that Belle Gibson never had cancer at all, and she was lying the whole time. Also, I think she desperately tried to cover up all this charity fraud and stuff, but people eventually realized what she was actually up to, that she was just collecting all of this money for herself, funneling it into her own extravagant lifestyle, and never actually making any of these donations or philanthropic contributions that she said she was going to. The more stuff that came out, it was just this like tsunami of allegations against Belle. And at first, I think people were like a little bit unsure, like, oh, she seems like a sweet girl. She seems great. I don't think this is true. But the more and more stuff came out, the more testimonies came out, the more evidence came out, people really lost faith in Belle. They lost hope in Belle, and they started to believe everything. And Belle was definitely trying to do damage control, but it was too late by this point. I'm assuming people just from their own, I don't know if like stubbornness is the right word, right? But just like their own desperation of like these people, let's say, who did have cancer and were following Belle's advice and were putting a lot of stock in Belle. I'm sure it took a long time for those people to wrap their head around this. And those were probably the people who were defending her at the beginning, because I don't blame them, right? They're like, I just ignored modern medicine for the first year of my diagnosis, thinking that I could be healed like Belle. And now I'm finding out that this person is a complete liar. That would be a really hard pill to swallow. She went from being the people's princess to the object of absolute hate from people. All of her comments were flooded with nasty negative comments, death threats, people telling her she should die from cancer, articles coming out about her every single day, more exposés coming out about her. And she eventually disabled her website and disabled her social media. I can understand, I guess, from like a mental health perspective why she did this, but it definitely made her look more guilty. I also just want to quickly, while I'm talking about kind of the charity stuff and the fraud, I also want to quickly touch on the story of Joshua Schwartz, who in the show, his name is Hunter Cross, and he is a young little 7-year-old boy who was also diagnosed with brain cancer. And Belle kind of befriended her mother. In the show, they meet at a park, but in real life, they met on social media. And I want to just discuss this a little bit because this was one of the biggest discrepancies kind of between the show and real life. So the mother's name was Penny or Penn. It's P-E-N-N-E. I'm not exactly sure. Penn or Penny Schwartz. And she spoke to the Herald Sun and explained, it wasn't until I started reading all of the recent media reports about Belle that I started to see the similarities. We can't help but think, did she use us to get into the mind of Joshua? She'd always ask heaps of questions about Joshy's cancer and treatments. Was it to give her more credibility? So yeah, kind of like everybody else in Belle's life, these innocent people who developed a sort of friendship and bond with Belle started to really doubt her intentions and look at the whole situation with a much more skeptical lens. And apparently, from what I understand, it's a little bit confusing. In the show, they make it seem like Belle proposed right off the bat, I'm going to use my social media, my following to raise money for you, and I will give you this money for Joshua's surgery. That's how they portray it in the show. As far as I'm aware, in real life, Belle did go online and kind of use Joshua as this bait to say like, hey guys, donate to Joshua. He really needs help. All this money is going to go towards Joshua, but she kept it all for herself. But the family wasn't aware of this. Like she didn't go and collaborate with the family and make this agreement with the family. She was kind of just doing it on her own volition. And the family apparently said they were blindsided by this whole scenario and they never received a cent from her. But they also weren't necessarily expecting to receive a cent from her, which is kind of a big difference from the show. Anyway, moving along, now that all of this scrutiny was out in the open, all these questions were out in the open, Belle finally had to address it, and she claimed that she was misdiagnosed by doctors and that this whole thing was just such a confusing, horrible ordeal for her. She said that she was having an identity crisis and that she was essentially painting herself out to be the victim in this scenario instead of the perpetrator, which is just like classic pathological lying, narcissistic behavior.
And I had received the definitive, no, you do not have cancer, then that was something that I had to come to terms with. That takes a lot. And it was really traumatizing. I was feeling a huge amount of grief. And
grief for not having cancer?
No, that I had been lied to and that I felt like I had been taken for a ride. It took me a lot to unpack that.
Despite being called out time and time again, she would continue to bear down, lie through her teeth. She would even lie about, like, it even came out, that she was lying about, like, really inconsequential stuff like her age. She was claiming to be older than she actually was. Just stupid stuff like that. Lying about where she grew up. And like I said, she couldn't even keep track of her lies because this girl had been lying consistently since, like, the age of 13.
Did you live in fear of being found out?
No, because I wasn't living in a space where I didn't know that this wasn't my reality.
Would you accept that you're a pathological liar?
No.
Do you take responsibility for driving any people away from conventional medicine in seeking treatment for their cancer?
That would be really heartbreaking to me because I never intended on doing that.
Do you accept that that's what you might have done?
I accept that might have happened.
Well, actually, how old are you?
I've always been raised as being currently a 26-year-old.
How old are you?
Well, I live knowing, as I've always known, that I would be 26.
Okay, Belle. This is a really, really simple question. How old are you?
I believe that I'm 26.
And?
I have two birth certificates and I've had my name changed 4 times. The identity crisis there is big.
In 2015, Belle sat down to do an interview with Women's Weekly Australia, and a big article came out, and this was kind of the first big article addressing the situation, and it was called My Lifelong Struggle with the Truth. And she has this sort of innocent, forlorn look on her face in the photo spread, which is purposeful for sure. And the title really should have been, in my opinion, My Lifelong Aversion to the Truth. Struggle, it's not a struggle for Belle to lie. It's easy. It's easy peasy for Belle to lie. It comes naturally to her. It's more, to me, it's more of an aversion. It's more of a dislike of the truth. She doesn't like her current reality, so she's just gonna make a new one. One could say that Belle was a master manifester. And that's the thing with Belle, is that in some ways I find her impressive and I find her inspirational in some ways. But then in many more ways, I find her to be an abhorrent human being. So it's just a complicated, interesting story. Let me know what you guys think below. After she did the Women's Weekly thing, she also sat down with 60 Minutes Australia, which I love. I watch 60 Minutes Australia all the time. I'm very interested in Australian true crime. There's a lot going on in that country over there, like lots of crime going on over there. Yeah, she did an interview with Tara Brown, who is an iconic journalist. I love Tara Brown. As a fellow journalist, She's my girl. I love her. And this interview with Belle Gibson with like her fugly pink turtleneck and her ponytail, I've seen this interview so many times. This interview is pretty notorious and infamous, I would say. And Tara Brown absolutely crucifies this girl. Like, Tara Brown is not here to play. She is savage, but she's also professional. She keeps her cool. But she basically calls Belle out on everything, and Belle is just squirming and cannot say something substantial to save her life. Like, she's giving all these word salad answers, all these roundabout answers. And I'm going to play a few of these clips for you throughout this video. But you'll really get a sense of how there's almost nothing behind Belle's eyes. And you can see Belle is thinking, like, okay, what emotion do I need to bring forth now? What answer do I need to bring forth? Like, she's trying to play Tara, and it's not working. Tara straight up comes out and asks Belle if she believes that she has a mental health disorder. She points to factitious disorder or potentially Munchausen. And Belle straight up says no. Tara also takes a moment to address the fact that not only was Belle lying about herself, but she also lied about other people in her family, including her brother, because Belle would say publicly that her brother had autism, which he didn't.
It is heartbreaking for me that he still carries stigma.
I don't think that comment means he carries stigma. I mean, he's upset with you for describing him as having autism.
Because he does.
I don't have autism at all, no. Even when I was a kid, she used to call me retard.
Anyway, so all of this was happening in like 2015, 2016. The walls were caving in for Belle Gibson, and she basically lost everything, which she deserved to lose everything. But in 2017, there was actually legal action brought against her. The Australian government decided that she would be guilty of misleading consumers and fined her $410,000 Australian under Australian consumer law. And to this day, 2024, Belle Gibson has not paid a cent of that. And now with inflation, it's over 500,000 Australian dollars now. And she's just not paying. She claims she has no money. She's absolutely poor. She has to take odd jobs here or there because no one will hire her. Obviously, who would hire Belle Gibson? So she claims she has no money. But then there's also, like, she's driving a nice car around. She seems to have nice clothes, nice accessories. And she also went on a month-long trip to Africa, just like a vacation. So make it make sense, Belle. A lot of people were not happy with this, though. They thought that Belle deserved jail time. They thought Belle deserved to go to prison. And I don't exactly know the ins and outs of it, but they decided not to give her any jail time, but instead just give her this massive fine of $410,000. But Belle's just like not paying it, and she's not going to pay it because there's no way Belle is ever going to come into enough money to pay that. At one point, as sort of an enforcement action, they went in and raided her home and would seize any valuable possessions that Belle had to kind of, which is what they do sometimes, right? Like a bank could, if you're like completely defaulting on a loan, like a bank can go in and like take things from your house to go towards your payment, like take your car, take your this, take your that, if you're refusing to pay on something. So that did happen to Belle, but it still doesn't even come close to making up for the amount that she owes. In recent years, Belle Gibson has mostly disappeared from the public eye. In 2019, she was spotted living in Melbourne with her son. But one thing remains, even going on, I guess 10 years later since Belle Gibson was found out, she has shown no remorse. She's not actually ever given a proper apology or a proper acknowledgement of what she did. And I don't think she ever will. I don't even know if Belle Gibson feels bad at all about what she did. She probably just feels bad for herself that she got called out and that she lost everything. But yeah, in conclusion, I think Belle Gibson's story is a cautionary tale to all of us to, not take everybody at face value, not believe everything you see on social media, not believe the highlight reel of everybody, because some of these people out here, a lot of these people out here are so desperate for attention, money, clout, fame, that they will blatantly lie, they will blatantly rage bait you, they will blatantly pull on your heartstrings. People have always gone to extreme lengths to get financial gain and get social status, and people will continue to go to extreme lengths for this, especially people with personality disorders or pathologies like Belle Gibson. So you just have to be cautious. And that doesn't mean that you expect the worst of everyone or you assume the worst of everyone, but facts are facts. evidence is evidence. And until you have cold hard facts or cold hard evidence, I would say just be cautious when it comes to GoFundMes, when it comes to donations, when it comes to believing some influencer's lifestyle and comparing yourself to them and comparing everything in your life to someone else. You may think they have it all figured out, but they could be honestly fabricating everything and lying through their teeth. This is why I have my social media deleted 6 days out of the week. I pretty much deleted my TikTok in general entirely. I don't have Twitter. I don't have Snapchat. I basically only have Facebook, which I use for work and I never really go on. And then I have Instagram that I literally download 1 day a week just to check my DMs, maybe put up a few stories, and then I delete it again because I really think it is a cesspool of negativity and a breeding ground for poor mental health and comparison. And I just don't need that in my life right now. And yeah, I also just got really freaking sick of influencers and people trying to sell me things all the time. People like Belle Gibson, maybe not to the same extreme as Belle Gibson, but I just think social media is obviously a tool for good, 100%, but can also be a tool for evil. And on that note, I will wrap up this video. Let me know what you guys thought of the show Apple Cider Vinegar. Let me know what you think of the case and some of my thoughts, some of my opinions. Do you agree with me? What are your thoughts? And let me know if you think Belle Gibson should have gotten jail time. I'm curious to know that as well. All right, guys, I will be back next week with another video. I'm going to try to post more consistently. So make sure you subscribe so you can follow along on this journey. And if you like this video, leave it a like. That would be awesome. I appreciate you. I love you. Have a great day. Bye.